This video is a record of a late May session at the Victoria Road stretch at Clacton-on-Sea. It also includes a tutorial of how I make one of my bigger fish rigs, the up and over rig. Panning around the area, you can see that I set up my gear to start the session by fishing Pybus Bay. This is a named bay between Felixstowe Groyne number 5 and number 6. I've started here at the top of the tide, but my intention is to move onto the groyne as the tide starts to ebb. The up and over rig on one of my rods is being used to fish squid and fish baits, hopefully for a ray or two. The short snood 3-hook clip down rig is a catch anything rig, and I've got that baited up with ragworm. My intention is to fish at distance, but I will be occasionally dropping shorter with a 3-hook clip down rig, just in case there are some soles around at this time of the year. Conditions look perfect to me. The water's coloured, the wind is from behind, it's light and the water is flat. Before I cast out the up and over rig, I'll run through the locational details. I've covered the regional setting in my previous Clacton videos, so here I'm just starting with Clacton itself. The area I'm fishing is northeast of the pier, and I've identified some of the nearby landmarks. I've numbered the groynes from the pier, and I've identified some of the major roads nearby. I'll zoom in on Victoria Road and pinpoint the precise spot that I fished. If you're hoping to catch rays, it generally helps if you can cast well past the end of a groyne. Being the top of a tide, there isn't much of a tidal pull, but what there is from right to left, which is why I've set up to the left side of the groyne. As you can see, most of this rock armour groyne is underwater at this stage of the tide, but you'll be able to fish from it as the water starts to recede. That should give you some advantage with fishing distance, since then you're not set back in a bay. But to begin with, I'm happy to explore this area, since I normally fish the bays. It's a promising start since I've got knocks on both rods. I'm just making sure that my lines haven't crossed. Although neither of the bites developed, something's had a go at my ragworm. Before recasting the 3-hook rig, I just checked to see whether anything's had a go at my fish baits. With the up and over rig, I've started with bluey wrapped in squid. Although I did get a couple of knocks, the fish bait seems untouched, so I've just clipped it down again and we'll be recasting it. Didn't take long to get more knocks on a rig with ragworm. The little knocks continue as I strike into one. Not exactly what I was hoping for, but at least this little eel saves a blank. More little knocks on a rod fishing ragworm. However, I think the culprit's the same, and the knocks don't develop into a better bite. Since my fish bait had been out there for quite a while, there's some annoying little bits of weed stuck on the line. In order to make this rig more streamlined for casting, I'm using one of the Trident hangover clips. These work pretty well, but it's a little bit filly to put your line over it. tide's started to recede now, and the rocks of the groin are now being exposed, so I can utilise these in my casting. I'm still fishing the bay with my other rig, but eventually I'll move my rods around to fish from this groin. I should really have waited till the rocks started to dry out, because they are a little bit slippery at the moment. I'm making sure I'm careful to stand on a flat top rock which hasn't got any weed on it. Since I'm now fishing in two directions, I've got to move my tripod round a little bit. Casting from those rocks seemed to work. Didn't take long for me to get a drop back and a slack line bite. I strike into a fish, but unfortunately missed filming the part when I'm playing it. However, the short tussle ended in the result I was looking for, a reasonably sized thornback ray. Since it's the first one I've got on film using the up and over rig, I'm going to spend a little bit of time explaining how I make these. I make my rigs with both single hooks and those which are pennelled. I make them at various lengths, and some have imps and some have impact shields. The one used in this video is the one I'm demonstrating here. It's the third from the left and just has a single hook clipped to a breakaway lead. It's made using the Trident components and a very vast 3/0 big mouth hook, although I also like the mustard Viking hooks. Trident terminate links are used to connect to the main line and to the lead. Although it's not really necessary, I like to use bits of silicone tubing to protect the knots. The hangover components themselves come in packets of 12, and that includes both the hangover clip, the SRT springs, and crimps. A swivel is used to attach your hook length to the body line, and you need a couple of beads with crimps placed either side. Crimping pliers and nail clippers are the tools that I'm using. I start by making a hook length, and I'm making a short version here about 1 metre in length. I'm using 50-pound zippy line. There's a variety of different knots you can use to tie your hook to the line, but here I'm just using a simple uni knot. You don't really have to twist the line first, but I do this mainly out of habit. Form a loop and put the tag end through it about 4 times. It helps to moisten the knot before pulling tight. Nail clippers are useful to cut off tag end and the other end of the line once I've measured it out at 1 metre. Of course you can make your hook lengths a lot longer, particularly if you're fishing in an area where the rays are bigger than the ones I'm expecting to catch. For body line I'm using 80-pound. I'm measuring this out at 75 centimetres. Before I attach the first termalink, I slide on a bit of that silicone tubing. The hole in the termalink is just the right size for 80-pound line. Once again, a simple uni knot is used to attach this. A pair of pliers can come in handy for tightening the knot. The tag end is snipped off and the silicone tubing moved up to cover the knot. This termalink would be used to attach the lead to. I now need to slide on the components used to attach the hook length, a crimp followed by a bead, followed by a swivel, followed by another bead, and then the final crimp. I measure out so that the swivel ends up about 10 centimetres from the termalink. Once I've got distance about right, I can then employ the crimping tool in order to fix the crimps in position. You could just use ordinary pliers for this, but this tool is made for the job. Before fixing the other crimp, I don't really want the two beads to be too tight together. I want to allow the swivel to move around freely a little bit. I then need to thread on the hangover components, a crimp, followed by the SRT spring, followed by the hangover clip. The idea about spring is that it absorbs the tension in your hook length when you're casting. I need to tie on the hook length before I can work out where to fix that crimp. So before I do that, I'll attach a termalink which links my rig to the shock leader. As before, I use a short silicone sleeve to protect that knot. Once again, a simple uni knot is used to attach the hook length to the swivel. As mentioned before, this rig has been made to work with a breakaway impact lead. Although fairly large, termalinks are very streamlined and very secure. I put a hook in its place for casting, then keep the hook length tight to the body line. Keeping the line tight, you need to run it through your fingers until you get to the point where the line will bend over onto the hangover clip. At this point, you're going to need to make the judgment as to where you're going to fix that crimp. You need to ensure that some of the spring is compressed, but not completely. Too loose and your hook length will fall off before casting. Too tight and there won't be enough compression left in the spring. So this is the most critical part of the job of making these rigs. When you think you've got it right, it's time to secure that crimp. So that's the finished job. By pulling hard at either end of the rig body line and stretching it, you can test out the function of that spring. Now back to the fishing, and I've moved my gear closer to the rocks. Both rigs will now be cast over the groin, but my first task is to change the bait on that rig which I caught that fish on. I've whipped on another bluey and squid wrap, and have trimmed off bits which are sticking out. So here's that up and over rig back in action. If I was using very large baits, then I'd probably want to use this rig with an impact shield. You can lose distance if your hook length comes off that hangover clip whilst casting, but as in this case it doesn't, and I'm able to get the bait out a fairly long way. I'm going to cast my other rig fairly close in, so I'm not bothering to clip that down this time. Casting this out about 25 to 30 yards. Didn't take long to get a decent knock on a rig with ragworm. I struck into something and it doesn't feel like an eel. Well, that's the result, a reasonable flounder. Before I can recast, I get a bite on the up and over rig. Winding down, I feel like I'm into something, but whether it's a ray or not, I don't really know. It's not hugging the bottom like the previous one, so maybe not. It's only a dogfish, but at least it's another fish on this up and over rig. And after quite a few sessions here where I've not had any bites on squid or fish baits, it makes a pleasant change to catch anything on it. Both rods have now rebaited. I could get both back into action. Another bite on a ragworm, only little knocks this time. Something different this time. It's species number 5, a little pouting. More knocks on the ragworm. then a knock I'm able to strike into. I finished the session with species number 6, a small scoredy bass. An enjoyable session. It's nice to get plenty of bites even if you can't hit them, and of course a bonus ray on bigger baits is always welcomed.